I'm Michael O'Sullivan. I own HubPeople. We're a company been around about 20 years. Originally as kind of a white label, and more recently we've developed an AI product which basically generates a discovery or dating app from a text prompt. But originally our history was way back when the internet had forums and people wielding ban hammers and stuff like that. So it's coming from a very old social, which is kind of recurring again. But so we've been involved in public or kind of online spaces for quite some time.
And obviously, as part of that, you've been a member of the Online Dating and Discovery Association for a while, and obviously we were the Online Dating Association previously, and no better person to explain what we do than a member rather than me as a CEO. I don't run a service. So can you just tell us a bit about your involvement with the association and kind of what we have done for you, or what we've all done together?
Yeah. So what was the ODA, now ODDA. I originally joined because louder. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I originally joined because we were doing business in a lot of different markets, and we're not really sure on kind of regulations that are coming through. So in the US alone, you've got 50 states, all with different laws, and they're coming thick and fast, like in Colorado and Connecticut and Utah and California. But we also, there's the ACCC in Australia to deal with. They've got their own e-safety commission. So there's a lot of laws and regulations coming, and we've just had one recently in the UK. So it's basically trying to keep abreast of all of that stuff. So originally it was just for information, so that we weren't blindsided product-wise or anything that we were going to invest a lot of development time in that might run afoul of these regulations. But I then realized once you join the board as well, actually, with some of the other people on the board, we've got access to some of the top guys at Match, and we can share a lot of information, and we can actually not only be aware of what's going on, but actually influence what's going on, either at a legal level, but just as importantly, once something actually comes into law, is engaging with the regulators. They're not going to talk to a business on its own, because there's the government, they don't do that. They will engage with an industry body that can speak on behalf of different companies. And at that point, you can influence the regulator in how they actually enforce, and look at enforcing regulation even after it's come into law. So if it's something's even bad for your business, you can have a very proactive discussion with them and explain to them what you're doing, and basically engage with them in a much better way than if you just sit around and wait for them to knock at your door with, they want to give you a £17.5 million fine or 4% of your annual turnover. So it's much better to be on the front foot with them.
Maybe we can just pick up on one of those that we've all been working on, and it's not US. I know we're in New York today, but we're going to talk a bit about regulator in the UK. Mm-hmm. So the Online Safety Act, many of you might know, is recently passed in the UK. This is going to have far-reaching impacts for all services that have user-generated content and user-to-user contact. So all dating and social discovery services will be covered by this. Ofcom sent out a 1,700-page consultation document. Obviously, anyone without a huge legal department really can't read that and understand what's happening. So what we've been doing at the ODDA is trying to create those information conduits between the sector and the regulator. And I wonder if you could just reflect on, has that been useful for you? I think it's inspired you to do some.
Yeah. So I think we've all done some lifting. I know we've relied definitely on Match's large legal department to digest a lot of some of the stuff and to share the information as well. But so Ofcom is the regulator in the UK that's tasked with implementing the online safety bill in the UK. They've been there's also the Information Commissioner's Office, and they're actually quite aggressive as well in the UK. But through the ODDA, and I have to say, Hannah, your fabulous work the last 2 years, we've now have great contacts. She's organising workshops with the regulators, and we're now getting to speak one-to-one with them and explain what we're actually doing. And we're finding that a lot of these regulators, these people, they're very well-meaning. They come from very nice families. They've got triple-barreled names, wonderful, but they have no idea what goes on online. They don't know what people upload. They don't know the tactics of scammers. They don't know a lot of stuff. And in many cases, we're in a much better position to educate them. So they're asking as well, can you just not filter for bad words? And we're like, well, yeah, we do that. We did that like 8 years ago. So And they're saying, well, that will solve all the problems. Or somebody comes, if there's anyone here from Yoti, I'm sorry, but someone comes from some external ID verification company, says, oh, if you install this, it'll solve all the problems. It'll work for 6 weeks. So trying to get them to understand that it is an ongoing, evolving threat matrix you're dealing with when it comes to online scams and online harms of people is really, really difficult to get through to people in government, because everyone wants to think there's a simple one-size-fits-all solution, which there isn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best example of that reactive work that we're doing. I just wanted to touch on a proactive bit of campaigning we're doing, and I actually asked this question yesterday, but thinking about competition policy. So we have the Digital Markets Act in Europe, we have the Digital Markets Competition and Consumer Bill going through in the UK. Recent news today from the Department of Justice here in the US about potential legal filings against Apple in the competition space.
Yeah, your shares are down 3.5% today, sorry.
But we've been working proactively in this arena on behalf of dating and social discovery services about the tax that Apple and Google place on us, because most of you are subscription-based services. So this is more proactive lobbying, trying to change legislation and support the lawmakers. And we're obviously seeing results, and just your reflections on that kind of proactive lobbying.
Yeah, it's really useful. I mean, there's lots of cases where, Apple and Google, for example, they have tons of information about all of their users. They scan your face, 100 times a day, every time you're doing a two-factor authentication or trying to basically pay for something. When, for example, we're looking for age assurance in the UK, we've been able to argue back as well, hang on, the people who own the device have all that information. Have you ever wondered why in the App Store apps are 17 plus, not 18 plus? They know that if they put 18 plus, they'd be asked to then provide that information out and to be a source of age assurance. So there's a lot of things the large platforms could be doing and they're deliberately not doing. And I think we're having some traction with government and getting them to understand that, yes, you can push it down to every merchant to solve all of these problems, but you will have a massive proliferation of user data in the same way that, let's say for the one age ID people for porn, you're just going to end up with Pornhub holding everyone's passport. Is that really what everyone wants? No. So there are ways to actually push back against some of these larger entrenched monopolies and saying to government, listen, we can solve these problems much more cleanly if you put a bit of pressure on these people who are controlling all the power. So it's very useful that way.
Yeah, and as I asked in the investment panel, potential to have real positive impacts on the industry and excite investors and grow all our companies. So that was a run through of lots of regulations. So how do you then prepare? You're in many different jurisdictions. How do you take what we talk about at the ODDA, the work we're doing, how do you then prepare the company?
Well, we just get out of some markets. So we were in India and then we got out. But then for others, we just work it into our planning in terms of, we've been heavily subscription based, but we're seeing a lot of threats towards kind of recurring payments in the future. So that makes us start to lean and look at micropayments and advertising support and other models. And if you have that kind of advanced warning of things that are coming, even if you don't win the battles, at least you can strategically be aligning your business, or at least have options, if things come up that make things more difficult for you.
And yeah, you touched on it there. The next question is going to be, why is it important? And I know we had a discussion about the PR side of it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if you get fined, that's expensive, but it's also reputationally really bad. So again, keeping people safe is tricky, and it's an ongoing problem. I've heard somebody say that we're living in a golden age of fraud, and I wouldn't dispute that. I think, and particularly with AI as well, the number of scams that we're seeing at scale. If you're just launching or you're small scale now, you just don't see it yet, but you will pop up on the radar of some of these organized gangs, and they will come after you with a whole bunch of different ways, and it will be persistent, and they'll launch and create profiles all day, every day, and they'll just wear you down unless you have the systems in place to deal with them. So, I'm a really depressing guy today. I'm normally more upbeat. There's lots of good stuff we can do to kind of filter them out, but you just need to be aware that it is organized. I don't know if anyone saw the news about the scam operation in the Philippines that was raided. It was, we actually saw that in our stats, and I spoke to 2 other business owners yesterday who also saw that in their statistics. So our number of registrations dropped by about 10 to 15%, but our initial revenue stayed the same. And this was a similar scale with these other kind of large operators. And we looked at it, and we have quite sophisticated anti-fraud systems, but there was basically a human trafficking operation in the Philippines, whereas a lot of Chinese nationals were trafficked into the Philippines. They were kept there basically as human slaves to do romance scams all day, 500 people. And the police raided and shut them down. The traffic has since gone back up in the last 2 days, so we basically had a respite for about 3 days. And I think we're quite sophisticated. So if you say it's not a problem, I think you're probably not looking hard enough. So just be aware fraud is a persistent issue, and I think the people who are going to win in the discovery or the dating space are the people who can establish the most trustworthy platforms. So that means, so if you're hyperlocal and you know all your neighbors and you have that as your USP, that's going to be amazing, because all of these scammers, they just try and get you off onto WhatsApp, onto something else that's not monitored, because they can conduct their scam without any hindrance at that point. So I think there's a lot of value for discovery platforms and for dating platforms as being that trusted intermediary, that you're not going to hand over your personal details to someone you don't know, but you can pass it off to an app or someone who's going to be trusted in the middle, who can basically do that verification for you. And I think that's where you can generate a lot of user value. And as this persists and people become more used to this idea that they can't always trust what they see online, the people who can offer the best trust marks, I think, will be the winners in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's obviously a big focus of what we talk about at the association is our logo, our line, putting trust and safety first.
Yep.
So yeah, these are the kind of conversations we have all the time. So just to kind of come to an end, having been in dating and social discovery in its broadest sense, how is the public thinking about social discovery right now? Are you seeing people wanting to build communities? Are they coming to you to do that? Where are we in the social discovery space?
Yeah, I was when we built our AI tool, we have a mixture of features on our platform which are both social, like a bit like a Facebook feed, where people can post in, publicly, and kind of a bit like forums and spaces like that, as well as kind of a matching Tinder style swipey bit. But we found there is a lot of demand for people looking for social. I don't think the user values are there. I think a lot of people are innovating by doing B2B deals on the back of, for example, local businesses, what we heard this morning. I think it's possibly maybe like dating was 10 years ago, where people didn't really want to pay for it, but now when everyone assumes you just pay for dating. So I think that will grow over time. And again, it's if you can be that trusted platform with the least weirdos on it. Definitely, ladies, you're the right idea with the women-only platform. It is straight men are the biggest problem. Honestly, right? I'm not doing myself any favors, but we come in and we destroy platforms. Right? We absolutely destroy them. So, if you can keep a lid on those guys, or kick them out, or just not have them in the first place as part of your business model, that's quite a wise thing to do.
We're very honest here. Association. Full note punches. No, and finally, I'm just going to say so thinking as the trade association, we talk to the media, we talk to academics, think tanks. How can we, communicate the value proposition of social discovery alongside online data? How should we be talking about it publicly going forward?
Well, I think I've actually learned a lot from Hannah, because she's a lot more professional than I am. But in understanding how you kind of communicate this, just a lot of people just think you're the same as Facebook, or you're some kind of social media platform. It's totally different. We're really not interested in users' data any more than we absolutely have to know things, because we're actually in possession of really, really personal information for people, and so we're a massive hacking target for that reason. Generally, we don't monetize that. I know Grindr had some issues with that, but we should really be looked at differently, because we're largely connecting people who don't know each other. And because of that use case, it is quite different. We're not trying to get people hooked and addicted and basically online 24 hours a day posting reels and stories and everything else, that they can monetize lots of different ways that we don't understand. I think largely in our industry, it's a much simpler business model, but it also means that we could be much clearer in our communication with the regulators to say we're not like Facebook, we're not trying to rig third world elections, we're trying to just get, whatever, the couple of people to meet together or to be a little bit less lonely or put pressure on the landlord or whatever those kind of goals are. And I think a part of that is we need to be honest that we are putting together people who don't know each other and that we have higher standards in terms of trust and safety than you would expect on social media.
That's a perfect end. I think that's exactly what we communicate. So yeah, that's all from us. I don't know if we
Cool. So I understand that you use AI to help with building platforms that you operate. So I was curious, do you have any advice for how to harness AI, particularly AI that can generate content, but do so in like a responsible way?
Yeah, so we use AI. Well, I mean, everyone's been using machine learning for moderation and for, basically a lot of back office stuff for years, or for your algorithm for matching people. But the generative AI, I think you've got to be really careful. So we use it just for generating a landing page and experience for a brand. It's a business setup tool. It's not really for users, but anytime I mention AI in conjunction with dating, I spend the next 2 minutes saying, no, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that, because everyone then assumes that you're generating fake profiles, you're doing all these other horrible things that people shouldn't be doing. So the good uses of generative AI, it can be great for coming up with copy. If we're not doing it yet, but we're looking a lot more at personality types, attachment styles, and everything. There's a lot you can do to make your marketing copy very much more effective using generative AI. If you've got a promotion, maybe there's different psychological triggers you can hang on if you know a little bit more about your user, and you can basically, using generative AI, I mean, a content writer will take a long time to write all that, give me 5 different versions, one for an avoidance style or one for, someone who's very open-minded, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for the conversion side of things and the marketing side of things for generative, but we have to be very careful to be clear when we are using it and obviously keep it away from profiles. I'm not sure even if it's wise. We're thinking about doing an AI profile writer, but we're thinking that maybe we might stick a little icon or something beside it to watermark it so people reading will know, okay, someone's had some help doing this, because I think beyond that you're really, it's the Cyrano de Bergerac thing. It's quite romantic when you read it, but when people find out you're reading, you're falling in love with someone who's not really that person, you can't string 2 sentences together, maybe. I think they should know that.
yeah.
Hi. So I do some research in data governance. I'm curious, like, what you mentioned around not collecting data, like new business models, not being like Facebook. Like, what do you kind of see as the future of data privacy, or how can people in like discovery space sort of think about when to collect data? What are good use cases for collecting data? What are not? Well, I guess we know what are not, but like, yeah, how can we empower like users with more control, agency, privacy over data?
Yeah. Okay. It depends where in the world you go. If you go to Germany, they don't want you. They just privacy is everything, even if you've got a pedophile. So in the US, they're really not that concerned at all. So UK is kind of somewhere in the middle. So, for example, we have a data retention policy on profiles. If you delete your profile, you've got a right to be forgotten under GDPR in the EU. We still retain that for 2 years in case there's any police investigations for anything you do. So, for all well-intentioned laws have basically create opportunities for bad actors to exploit. So, we've deliberately, from working with law enforcement, decided, well, hang on, we think, that's reasonable. It's not visible anywhere, but it's in our data warehouse that if there was ever a crime or someone was being investigated, we could provide evidence, and we think that's more responsible as a business. But again, some people just delete it straight away. But if you do like an ID verification with your passport, something like that, that's really sensitive. So we don't want to keep that, so we delete that straight away once the verification is done. So it's kind of a matrix of how sensitive is the information and what's the likely use that you could have for it, but always bear in mind, what's a bad guy going to do? Are you getting rid of data that could be used to help somebody genuinely in a situation. But if you're doing it just for commercially, I might be able to sell this to somebody, someone like, you should just get rid of it.
And I think like it's an ongoing discussion, privacy versus safety. I think we heard a lot about safety in the last couple of days, but as you say, that does require a lot more data collection and data processing. And we're in these conversations with regulators as well about what are the legitimate reasons to share data, prevention of harm, prevention, fraud prevention. Is that allowed? So it's an interesting ongoing discussion, definitely.
And there's a weird catch-22 with children's data in the UK with the age-appropriate design code and stuff with the information. Commissioner's office is, you basically have to say we don't collect any underage, we don't process any data of people under the age of 18. Now it's generally not much of a problem with some brands like Tinder and stuff, they will get people 16 and 17 signing up. But in order for you to basically blacklist them, you've got to retain information on children. And then the UK government says, well, now you fall under a completely separate category, or you just delete all of that data, and then they can come back tomorrow. So there's a lot of inconsistencies, I guess, with the law and how they're implemented, and we're just trying to step through that with government. And again, it's much easier to have this conversation if you go to them with a problem rather than they come to you with a problem.
So if you want to get involved in these fun discussions,
Yeah.
think about joining us.
Yeah, do. I think if you're small, it was like $70 a month or something.
Yeah.
And even if all you're doing is reading to find out what law has changed, or so for example in Colorado, if you ban someone on your platform, you need to notify anyone who's had any interactions with them. Just in Colorado, it was great. That's useful. But in terms of development, so even if it's only that, you're just keeping abreast of that is quite useful. I also think it also is a good signal for regulators that your business is taking trust and safety seriously as well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.